So,
I don't want to get choked up, but you know, I'm so sorry. Like, I do this every interview, and I try not to be the girl who always cries, but maybe, hopefully,
well,
helps people
this
to
has
see
been
that
an
I do
emotional
have.
journey for you.
It's been a very emotional journey.
You've been doing this for quite a few years ahead of the rest of us. So, welcome to another episode of Optometry Profits Revealed. I'm your host, Peter Precht. And today I have a special guest with me today. We're dealing with the Omniverse City's Chief Imagineer. I'm going to go right into your resume, Charlene. Charlene was a designer of the Vision Source store, the founder of both Vision Show and Optical Near Me. You've been in optics 27 years. And without any further ado, Charlene Nichols, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Congratulations on your new podcast. I always commend somebody who steps outside of the box and does something new. So thank you for what you're doing for our industry.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to try to tell the story of the dispensary through the eyes of the optician and relate that right back to optometry and practices all over the place. I'm going to start with just a couple of quotes that I got from your material, and I'm going to kind of leave it out there for you to elaborate on. And the first one is, help me and help us all understand what omnichannel ecosystem means.
Well, that's a great question. And I got to say, thank you for doing your homework, because I do throw a lot of different words out there, and I do push the boundaries of language. Omnichannel is not a new word, although we were the first ones to use it in our industry in 2015 and in 2016 when we introduced the Optical Near Me system. What we found is, although the main components of that were virtual try-on, e-commerce, these are typical tools that are used in these types of extensions of the optical. And we knew we wanted to be a virtual optical long before we wanted to be an e-commerce solution. And what we found is there needs to be an ecosystem. There needs to be a supportive stack, if you will, of participants, frame companies, lens companies,
Right.
marketing companies, and so on and so forth. But the biggest participant is the customer. It is the optician.
Right.
It is the optometrist that we're helping. And we wanted them to understand that they already have an omni-channel ecosystem, which consists of all of those players if you're going to build a virtual optical,
Right.
but it does not replace what you should already have as an omni-channel infrastructure. That's your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, your LinkedIn, your Google business profile, your website, your physical store, and how all of those things work together. That is how you define the customer experience, and we call this the 360 X factor.
It's really neat. Earlier, you and I were talking, and you related to, hey, 25% of the time they're there, in that environment, choosing selection, whatever, all of that regarding eyewear. But that's a lot of time that's open. There's like you said, 360 becomes immersible. The other thing we talked briefly about was digital, virtual, metaversal. Explain the differences again between those three, if you can.
Yeah, and what you've just done there is you've broken down what we consider the 90 degrees of presence. So this is when people are in your store. This is when they're, in your office. This is when they're, checking in as a patient. They do all of these things physically. But if all of the things that they do leading up to coming into your store, and then after leaving, and I say store because we're talking about opticians here. We understand there's an optometry element, but we're talking about opticians here. So if they're in your boutique, if they're in your store, if they're in your gallery,
right.
whatever
boutique.
whatever environment you have, right? They got there somehow. They got there through researching you. They got there through interacting with somebody who knew you.
Yep.
They got through searching for a hashtag, a Google search. Maybe they were inspired by TikTok.
Right.
These doors or portals, if you will, are everywhere. They're 360 degrees around your customer. But your physical door only covers that 90% of the perspective. The other 180 degrees are spent digitally, virtually, and metaversally. And that's something we've identified in building the Omniverse City. And it's interesting, if you look at our journey, you talked about Optical Near Me, which is a virtual layer that we've designed.
Right.
We designed that in 2016. So we were very early. We were 4 years before COVID.
Right.
So we were developing remote accessibility for optical shops 4 years before the largest pandemic in history.
Right.
Had we had the success then that we're having now, the entire industry would have been online. And, to this day, it's kind of heartbreaking. I feel like in a way, I kind of feel like I didn't succeed the way that I would have wanted to, because I knew the tools were there. I just couldn't get people to understand this at that moment. Like, virtual was a bad word.
Well, there's intangibles that were associated with the pandemic and our industry specifically that, and we won't get into all those details, but there was a few resets in a few places. And quite frankly, opened the door for us to do what we're doing now too, which is a blessing, at the end of the day. At least for me it is.
There's a lot of things that happened during that period of time for those that were paying attention.
Right.
For those that didn't say, okay, this is a 2-year, vacation. And there's a lot of people that did that. This was the moment to learn. We didn't know it at the time. I knew it because I was plugged into the emerging tech sector, and I didn't even know it. I didn't realize how much on the front end I was until the world did go into lockdown, and I saw the largest companies in the world not even present. They themselves did not have the tools to facilitate this industry. I mean, look, we all have to think back to that moment, right?
Right.
Didn't we think that somebody's got this figured out? There was no backup generator for an entire sector of the world that provides vision. How many people got calls and emails from upset clients and patients because they needed their glasses to see and they just couldn't get the access to care? I spoke to one optical shop who had their shop burned down during the riots and the fire. They had to literally hand call all the people they could remember because all their records were on paper. They couldn't even find the paper to find out. They had all the glasses. They just didn't know who they went to. So this is a very real problem, not being digitally transformed. Digital transformation has already happened. If you haven't done it, you're very far behind.
Right.
Virtual transformation is on the tail end. I hate to say it, and it happened extremely quickly. AI has sped up the metaverse development. I'm here to tell you the metaverse is absolutely not dead. I go to it every single day, and it is alive and kicking. And I'm not the only one building metaverse platforms, so I'm not the owner of the metaverse. I'm a champion and participant and a lead developer in the metaverse industry, not even just in the optical industry. So I've taken all of my leadership skills that I've learned here, working with everyone on our industry, and I've applied them in the metaverse industry. And we've been able to really build a portal for our industry to connect with the world.
That's really exciting. It's exciting that we're, I don't want to say we're ahead of anybody else per se, but certainly not lagging behind with the work that you're doing, which I think is awesome. I'm going to throw another quote at you.
Peter, do you mind if I don't want to skip over what you just said.
What's that?
So people don't say to me, Charlene, and I say people, I mean outside of the industry. They don't say to me, Charlene, you did such a good job bringing this metaverse to reality. They say, the optical industry is surprising me. Wow. They see me as a representative of all of us. I'm not getting full credit for this. Our whole industry is getting applauded by. There's tech sectors out there that are pleasantly surprised that a potentially mostly analog industry is racing into the metaverse. So yes, the optical industry is getting some very good branding for the optical metaverse and what we're doing. People are like, wow, let's pay attention to this industry. It's a sleeping giant. Let's see what we can do to kind of push some innovation.
It takes an artistic ability to be able to visualize what isn't there. So, that's different. But to take that a 2 or 3 steps further and, create, a reality, an augmented reality, a virtual reality, any
it's like
reality.
Turning your imagination inside out. It's like literally a projector for your imagination. It is probably one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life.
I can imagine, and I'm only just beginning to grip, your work, which to me is eye opening. I'm so ingrained in the human connection part of it, which is I think it's ultimately where the whole connection aspect is, where you and I keep hitting these chords together. And we're like, I get you, I understand what you're going for and where your goals are. Mm-hmm. But definitely, I love this quote: to re-examine or to reimagine how they do business together. I've always been a champion of that. Some of my earlier business designs were, mobile. When I was a mobile optician, there was, I think, 5 of us on the East Coast. Now there's handfuls per city. And it's gone from luxury. Again, my goals were to help people that needed me most. So it was much more of a labor of love than it ended up actually being profitable. But the stories are unbelievable, and the hand-to-hand contact and that right there was a reimagination of how to do business. You know, can you elaborate on what that means to you, to reimagine how they do business together?
Well, yeah, I can. And I think when you pulled that quote, it was from a while back. And in the beginning, again, let's take it back to your ecosystem conversation. There's these layers there, and
Right.
one of the each layer has a conversion point. And I think that quote was talking about the conversion point between the B2B sector, which is like the manufacturers and distributors and the supportive layer of our industry, the manufacturers that mostly independent. My focus has been mostly independent
Sure.
because you find that these larger corporations are so centralized, they are their own ecosystem.
Right.
And that's why the word ecosystem is so important, because if you don't want to be a part of a centralized ecosystem, that's what decentralization is all about. It's about building your own world. And in order to do that, you do have to reimagine it, because you can't take old processes that work for somebody else and apply them to you, because then there's no point in changing.
Right.
I'll give you a real example of
Right.
this, though,
Right.
because it's somebody that presented my idea to me. My favorite thing is when people sell my idea to me. So I had a client who was using Optical Near Me, and they said, I'll tell you exactly how I'm going to use this. I have a lot of patients that come to me and they try to go shopping for their grandma. And it's very annoying because they take like pictures of the frames that are on the wall and
Right.
they're texting them to grandma. And grandma's like, I don't know. So they were like, I really love that you can upload a picture of grandma's face so I can send grandma while I'm in there pictures of her wearing these different frames that I'm picking out. And I can see that they're physically there in the store.
Right.
Now, since then, we've developed this real-time inventory system with the help of Organize, which is another startup, woman-founded startup. Patricia, shout out to you, girl, that I started working with. And this is the benefit of us working together.
Right.
Patricia reimagined inventory control for independents because as a frame vendor, our frame rep, she decided that it was just too challenging for her to do her job because her clients didn't have inventory. So she reimagined
Right.
the industry and created her own system.
So there's an example of a connection directly into our world. Just put something
There's like
there.
10 examples in there. That's the crazy thing, is that
Right.
once you start solving these problems, these solutions build themselves.
Right. I love this quote as well. Construct the future for eyewear dispensing. That's hits a chord with me, and you know why. But explain that.
The very first pair of glasses that we ever sold through Optical Near Me was reluctantly sold through an optician who was on Opticians on Facebook. And I was trying to get this concept off the ground. It was very hard to get anyone to buy into it back in that time. It was 2020. It was during the pandemic, actually. So I'd already built it. It was out there.
Right.
I was really having a hard time getting opticians to sign up, and even a harder time getting them to promote it so they can get sales. So we had clients, but there wasn't a whole lot of eyewear dispensing happening.
Gotcha.
But this optician had her uncle, the woman's uncle had passed away. This optician's uncle had passed away during the pandemic. And the aunt was in the hospital, and it was like COVID, and it was just this crazy moment. And she lost her glasses. And she had like 3 days until the funeral, the aunt. She needed glasses. Nobody could get them to her. And we were able to, with Optical Near Me, get her to find her perfect glasses, because this woman's devastated. She doesn't want to go through, first of all, buying glasses during that time was even far more complicated than it is now. And she, just couldn't get somewhere in time. So she was able to get those glasses in time to, to say goodbye to her loved one, to see them. Could you imagine not being able to see somebody you love when you're trying to get that last image of them before you leave? I mean,
Right.
this is
Right.
this is what I mean. There's
Huge.
so many use cases. We're so hung up sometimes as an industry on what we don't want to do or what we don't feel comfortable with, that we forget there's a lot of people who they don't have another option. They're not like choosing online because they're saying, forget you guys, we don't want to support you. It's either accessibility, it's anxiety, it's a lot of different things.
I'm with you. And, they get lost in that shuffle. They completely do. They get swept under that carpet of, that individual who's under the age of 35 and just wants to get their prescription and walk and buy online and go. And that's the whole kit and caboodle. And it is, it's way more diverse than, there's other aspects to this that have to be considered. And some of them are bigger than we realize, I mean, no, I cannot imagine not being able to see clearly as you're going through, the loss of a very close loved one that,
And you may
no.
disagree with this or agree. I'm not sure. We haven't talked about this offline, but I wouldn't call the traditional e-commerce experience dispensing. You're talking about companies that make these glasses mass produced.
Right.
We all probably can guess based on the amount of returns that are coming into optical shops that the quality control is limited at best.
Right.
There's probably not a guardian at the gate checking these things in with a
I'm gonna
lensometer and
guess not.
scrutinizing every little nook and cranny and scratch. And they're landing on these people's doorsteps. And let's be grateful for the ones that are bringing them to you, because the rest of them are driving on the road incapable of seeing. I have just
that's a
real
really
quickly,
good
I want to
point.
make sure I make this clear, Peter. I have spent a lot of time talking to people who buy eyeglasses online, a lot of time. And a lot of times the average person will buy 10 pairs of glasses a year just to get one that works. And they know it. They don't even return these. They are willing to forgo
Wow.
9 pairs of ineffective glasses to get one pair. They've basically become disposable. And I mean, let's talk about what that can do to the economy.
Well, they've become disposable as a patient. They've created themselves in a disposable way as a patient too, because if they would take 10 minutes to quite literally 10 or 15, the way we're meeting, wow, could do wonders. We really could, and that is, you're hitting on the head, because it takes two, you got to step into this the way as well, but meet them where they are going in the right
Absolutely.
way. Don't don't come walking in the door with your axe wielded. Handle this the right way, because at the end of the day, people need to see clearly. They're going to do what they're going to do, and if you can meet them at any type of bypass with professional advice, you're ahead of the curve. So let's relate what we've been talking about to specifically, we have been relating them to independent practices actually, but let's relate this to profits now and then in the future. How would you? Because if there's a practice manager saying, Charlene, what does this mean to me now? What does this mean to the job I do in 10 days, and let alone 10 years?
I got to be honest with you, Peter. Based on my experience, that would be a challenging answer for anybody,
Right.
because the first thing you want to talk about with success is metrics.
Right.
And metrics are different. Like, everybody's going to throw different metrics at you. They're going to say, oh, how many pairs of glasses do you dispense a day? Or, oh, how many patients do you see the eye doctor versus how many, like, what's your conversion rate? Like, there's
Right.
all these metrics, right?
Right.
But there's also important metrics that people miss almost 100% of the time. How many people come to your website versus how many book an appointment.
Yep.
Versus how many people, pre-check and look at your glasses online, assuming you even have any options there to begin with. If you knew the answers to those questions, then you would understand all of the money that you're already leaving on the table. So we like to equate what we're trying to do right now, not to adding new revenue streams, although we can do that with the tools that we have, but we strongly believe that there's an opportunity to stop the leaky bucket. And, I mean, the logical thing when you see the water level receding is to pour more water into the bucket. But what we're trying to do is help people to understand where it's falling in the first place.
Right.
Customers need to be constantly engaged.
Yep.
You need to be able to know how long it's been since they've been there. You need to know, like, what their likes and preferences are. Maybe they are a 5-pair a year customer.
Right.
Maybe they only bought 1 pair from you and they're going to buy the other 4 pairs online.
Yep.
So you still think that they're a loyal patient. Meanwhile, 90% of the time they're buying glasses somewhere else. It's only a matter of time before that, one-time sale isn't going to come to you anymore. So
Isn't that the
that's, it's more
truth?
about like protecting what you have before we talk about adding.
It's the truth. It's a level of quality, not just at the engagement level, but the end product going out the door. It's not too hard to quantify to somebody that we know has bought multiple pairs online. Look, here's the reality. We know that those 3 or 4 other pairs, like you said, they'll get the one insurance pair through the practice maybe or something like that. And then the others that are recommended and likely needed for whatever aspects of life that they're doing, may not function or fall apart or may not be the quality that they're looking for. Sometimes these can be consolidated into quality pairs that function beautifully out of that existing environment. As long as the advice is there, the proper recommendations are made, in conjunction with your prescription and curvatures and things that an everyday patient wouldn't possibly understand.
I love what you just said. And I would challenge you, because you're capable of this. I would challenge you to create a decision tree that represents every decision that a human being needs to make when selecting eyeglasses, right down to,
No.
Where are my biggest challenges?
For lack of better terms, that's actually our consultation process and a frame styling session. When someone books something on I See Clearly, that's pretty much the process. There's ways to drill it down. Obviously, there's some details of products and questions that are pertinent to others that you can determine early on whether you need to go down a certain road or not. Like you're saying, it's a good trail that has a lot of potential directions. We can go this way, we can go that way. And that's kind of cool. There's a lot of possibilities, and I totally understand that. Makes sense to me. But I like that idea of having that tree exist in an environment for all, for like, hey, any optician in any environment.
Well, and you said something offline that I think is really important. And the evidence of what I'm about to say is clear in the amount of time it takes to onboard a new person into the industry, a new optician.
Right.
You have spending 20 or however many hours, 30 to 40 hours a week in an optical shop.
Right.
It takes probably 2 to 3 months minimum before that person knows all of the different components, the different lenses, the different parameters, the different materials, the different frames, the different insurances, all these different nuances.
Right.
The consumer doesn't really have a fair place to educate themselves on all of these things. There's a million different resources out there, but they're all very confusing. They're not all connected. There isn't really a Google for the optical industry. There's like, it's really, really, really difficult for people to get the information that they need.
Right.
And this is an era where AI can be very powerful, because if you could build your own database with your own knowledge, let's say you had a practice, Peter, and you wanted to build like Peter the bot, right? You could take all of your knowledge that you have,
right,
and you could build a database with it. This is the era we're in. This is accessible to you and everyone else who's listening. You could build a database based on your knowledge. And then rather than trying to get someone to read a blog that you didn't write, that you're not 100% sure aligns with what you believe, they could just ask the representative of you.
Right.
that you've controlled, and you
built it. If it's your words,
It's really a moment in history that we need to be very clear what our new capabilities are, what our new possibilities are.
Right.
We don't need to do things the hard way anymore. That's what this era is all about.
That's the cool thing about the introduction of AI. I mean, obviously everybody has these instant fears, but where you and I see the use is in unexplored places, or taking the limits of what we consider a little bit further. And I think that before you start going down that road, the potential's absolutely limitless. You talk about it'd be one big tree I'd be building there. Lots of branches.
The Warby Parker of AI eyewear dispensing has not occurred yet. Right. I am trying with every breath of my being for the optical metaverse to be that, because that's not me. That's That's you guys. Okay, that's opticians and optometrists. That's what we're here for. We're here to empower
Right.
opticians and optometrists to be that. If opticians and optometrists, independent opticians and optometrists are not that, soon a bigger entity will be that. And
I,
all that data
I
that they
totally agree.
receive will be completely, just forget about it. You won't be able to compete with that. They've got all the data sources to plug this thing out there immediately and start collecting that data and be almost unstoppable. So this is really a moment to take very seriously. If you don't start building your own infrastructure, you're going to be in trouble. I don't mean to be a fearmonger, but I just don't know any other way to communicate the seriousness of this.
Well, you're talking profits. We're talking lives. We're talking livings. We're talking the future of the eye care industry. It sounds so cliche-ish, but it is absolutely what you and I are head, neck, and shoulders into at this moment. And the potential there. I mean, you and I can see it, but I do think that it is a tall order relating that information down in an effective way. We know how technology diffuses into action, and it's easy for us to say, oh, the early bird gets the worm. But, if we can't make what we're building relatable to the here and now, and then show them the map in between the two, which is where we're going to go next.
Are you talking about EWAW?
Well, that's part of it, but then
Yeah,
then
because I
then
was thinking the same thing. You're really good at like this whole like chronology. Like I love. Thank you. This is a really good interview, Peter. I appreciate it. You're helping to connect dots. I think that people might not have connected on their own. So,
well, there's no question that
my ears are tuned in, Peter. I'm all the things Peter right now.
I I've followed you for some time, and I've had a hard time connecting some of these things. So we're getting answers. So I'm hoping that the result of this is that not only is it more explainable what you're creating and how it relates back, but the essence of it right now and how it's going to relate to what's coming, and specifically what's coming next year. Well, let's not wait any further. Let's roll right
Well, let
into.
me just quickly flip the lens around for one moment,
Okay.
and let me ask you. What was your perception before meeting me and doing this kind of pre-interview, getting to know me? Because you did do your due diligence in getting to know me before this interview, and I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
What was your perception before that initial interaction, and now, of course, getting these deeper answers? And maybe if you could share it in opticianese, so the people listening can kind of understand. I'd really appreciate to hear your perspective.
I'll be very forward. I didn't know how to relate the fashion forward part of the optical industry to not just Omniverse City and what you're doing. I had always thought you were way more involved in direct practice management, counseling, guiding, those type of things, as opposed to the future end aspect of it. I had no idea you had designed the Vision Source store. But so these things are a little bit foreign to me. My background in optical took a little bit of a curtail about 13, 14 years ago, where I went into a safety eyewear bubble. And it is a bubble. No question
Yeah.
about it. Where it's badly needed. It's growing tremendously. The production that is remaining in this country utilizes prescription safety eyewear at large levels, which is great. And I'm a big proponent of it, and I do stay somewhat in touch with that industry. But when I stepped away to create I See Clearly is when I began to look at what you were doing. And again, the clarity came into focus, honestly, with the Eyewear Art Walk. And I know it sounds like I know it sounds like a softball, but it really is. So
Oh, I don't want to get choked up, but I'm so sorry. Like I do this every interview and I try not to be the girl who always cries, but maybe hopefully
well,
help people
this
to
has
see
been
that
an
I do
emotional
have
journey for you.
compassion. It's been a very emotional journey.
You've been
But
doing this for quite a few years ahead of the rest of us. So go
I'll tell
ahead and let
you,
it rip. I'm
I'll tell you what is profound. Stephen Fournier is a legend in the industry. And he's working with one of the most legendary eyewear brands. that ever existed. Casanova. I'm wearing one
Mm-hmm.
of his frames now. I'm very proud to be in his life. But Stephen reached out to me, did not know me. He saw what I was doing with my vision show, which my vision show was pre-COVID. We were doing this before the pandemic,
Right.
2 years before the pandemic.
Right.
And then after the pandemic, right after lockdown, a couple weeks later, Stephen inboxed me and he slid into my DMs and he said, I can bring my friends in the frame industry and help you to make this a thing. Now, at that moment, my vision show had like 10 followers. So I was like, okay.
Right.
And Steven's dream was not virtual, it was physical.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of compromised to do the virtual thing with me, but he made it very clear that the moment that we were allowed to be physical, he wanted to be physical.
Right.
Now, he did not have patience for this whole thing. I mean, he was patient. He came to every show, every 90 days. And when the moment that there was even a hint that we can go physical, he said, Charlene, we're going physical. And he got all his frame friends he got Coco Song, he got Nina Murr, he got all these Hanu, all these huge frame companies that are very big in our industry. I mean, they may not be big outside of the industry, but in our industry, these are like the rock stars, right? These are the people that everybody loves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he took them on tour across the country, and we worked with the ABO to get a certification, virtual same as live. We were the first ones to do this.
Awesome.
And we live streamed into these hotels.
Right.
And we maintained a 6-foot distance from optician to optician. And these people went to the hotel. They're like, can we go to the hotel? I'm like, can you stand 6 feet away from the next person? Yes, you can go. And I have videos of this. These frame vendors were in this suite, and they each had a room. And so during the pandemic, when everything was locked down, there was no Vision Expo, no Mito, no Silmo, and there wouldn't be one for at least another year and a half after this moment in time.
Right.
So this is like a year and a half before our industry came back.
Right.
And these opticians and optometrists were able to go door to door, visit these frame companies, learn about their brands, and buy physically during a time when no one could buy physically. That was the Eyewear Art Walk. That's how it started.
That's really neat.
When we did the Optical Metaverse event, which was in July of this year, we had a lot of new people come out to support this, and it was overwhelming. We had Dr. Terrio, who was talking about clean beauty, and we had Lynn Lawrence, who was sharing his 20, 30 some odd years of knowledge and educating the industry as an ophthalmic tech gone, he teaches across the country, and he's very well knowledgeable.
Right.
We had just so many great participants. So I didn't want this to end. I didn't want the optical metaverse like that. That was a moment. That was like finally the flashpoint. And I didn't know what was going to happen. So I was invited to speak at this big emerging tech event in Los Angeles called Talk Now Walk. I was invited by Trevor Williams, who is, I've come to know since I've been working with him, a brilliant event coordinator. I mean, to be able to work with somebody that is capable of taking your vision to this extent physically is doing it virtually is one thing. Doing it physically is a whole nother thing.
Totally.
And Trevor's worked with, Samsung and Google and all these companies. So he's worked with really big budgets, but he knows how to work with, a budget like ours as well. Right. So we are taking Eyewear Art Walk to all 7 cities that are on that website. I could tell you right now that we've had several vendors already confirm and place deposits on this, and several others, and we only launched a week ago, and several others that are extremely excited. We have Young Dirty Bastard performing, so we're going to have, and he's the first R&B artist, but we've got others on our, dance card that we want to fill. So this is going to be fun and exciting, and it's going to be a chance for our industry to reimagine how we do business together.
Completely.
Thank you for letting me get through that.
No, it is. I don't see how it's not emotional. not just for you, but I mean, think about, to me, just, I'm definitely one of those old school folks who has this hard time relating to putting a stylus on or, even an augmented reality situation. So, I'm shifting my mindset from, not quite a lagger. I'm not one of those, I have to do it this way, I'll do it. I'm kind of like in between that and hopefully moving more rapidly towards an early adapter. These are, social science nerd terms that again, right come right back to that E.M. Rogers theory that I talked about before. But you're absolutely an innovator, which is cool. So, if it's emotional for you to finally see things come into fruition that have been in your mind for years, I mean, how can it not be emotional?
I'll tell you why it's so emotional. I was very clear when I started why I was doing this. I've said it on interviews since I started.
Right.
Daniel Feldman did a lot of my early interviews, and you can go back and see interviews from 2017 even, where I'm talking about how I'm doing this to preserve the sustainability of an industry that I love. And Eyewear Art Walk, it's not just emotional because the industry is embracing it.
Right.
It's emotional because the world is embracing it. I'm speaking to politicians at these cities that are very excited about being involved in the sustainability of vision. This isn't just about like frames. This is about lenses too. Like that's part of it, right? That's how we see is really important. And when people buy glasses through these e-commerce websites,
Right.
they don't get educated
No.
on the lens part of it. And
Correct.
so they're missing a lot of chances to communicate the challenges that they're having that could indicate a major disease that could, we're hearing horror stories from my friends that are all optometrists. They're
Right.
talking to me about people that waited too long and they've got masses in their brains that could have been perceived with just a simple comprehensive eye exam. This
Right.
isn't like, this is very, very big what we're doing. This is a very big deal. This is like righting a lot of wrongs.
Various types of cancer can be early detected with a simple retinal picture. And you're right. That is technology that has been introduced in just in my time, as an optician. So we are seeing a little bit of a fast forward, and I do get how challenging it is to accept, things, to adapt new behaviors. Change isn't easy, but all of us get new phones all the time.
I love that
we
you said
figure
that.
those
Yes.
out, don't we?
Right? It's so true. And how many people have an Oculus, whether they use it or not? Almost every household has some sort of VR technology now.
Oh, that is absolutely the truth. No question about it. This has been a fantastic dialogue. And we're going to wrap up this episode, but I would love to take this a little bit further. I'd love to have a complete discussion about Eyewear Art Walk because
yes,
I want to.
We'll have to bring the team for that one.
Right. That sounds like a great idea.
And Trevor here. Yeah, they would love to be a part of that.
I think that's great because I want to physically explain it and then connect it to Omniverse City, what's going on. The other industries that are involved, which really excites me. So
definitely, it's great.
Yeah, I think it is. It's completely amazing.
Well, it's funny when let me just let the cat out of the bag. One of the other things that Young Dirty Bastard and his team decided to do, in addition to performing, is to produce an eyewear line with us. They needed some support and guidance, and we helped them with that.
Awesome.
We're going to be calling it Vampires, and they're going to be photochromic lenses that are clear indoors and turn into sunglasses outdoors. And that was Dirty's idea to call them Vampires, okay? By the way, it's trademarked.
That is so cool.
I'm so excited. And he does want to distribute it through opticians and optometrists. So he's going to design the line and give it to opticians and optometrists because he doesn't want to sell glasses online. He wants to support our industry. But he's like, what's really funny? Glasses wasn't even on our radar. Like they have all sorts of things that they can do, right? Every hip hop artist is going to be hit up now by these major brands. Like, hey,
here we go.
But it's just we're just not. We need to get on the grid. It's our time. This is our time. There was a non-optical or optometry related industry source that talks about emerging tech. And they identified the optometry, I know we're optical, but we're related in a lot of ways, the optometry industry as the most poised for innovation. Like it's the biggest opportunity because there's so much catch up needed to do there. And there's a lot of innovators. I mean, you're an innovator. There's a
Right.
lot of Patricia's an innovator. We're speaking to Carrie
Absolutely.
Wilson. She's an innovator. Dr.
Helen
Pam
Whitaker.
Terrio, she just launched a dry eye center in the metaverse.
Right.
She's an innovator. And there's many more out there. Some of them I can't mention because they're working behind the scenes and they're kind of in stealth mode. But believe me, we got a lot of unicorns in the basement.
Right. Yeah. The opticians associations themselves are rich with innovative thinkers, people that really are excited to look forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'll end it real quick by saying this that I guess about 2-3 weeks ago, I saw an engagement online, and there was a woman who had retired from her industry, and she was in her early 60s and bored out of her mind. Her daughter was an optician. Now she's taking the ABO. And I don't know. Now it's my turn to cry. That just, I don't know.
Aw.
There's something about helping people see clearly that is special beyond realization. So we're gonna end it on that. Thank you so much for this. This has
Thank
been a
you. This was
wonderful
great.
discussion. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to discussing in much more detail the Eyewear Art Walk of 2024 with you. Thank you so much, Charlene. This has been great.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Peter. Thank you for having me. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye.